In this lesson, we're taking a look at major 7th chords, not to be confused with dominant 7th chords, which we looked at in the previous video. Major 7ths have a much more dreamy sound to them, whereas dominant 7ths are a little bit more tense and bluesy, so it's really important that you don't get them mixed up and play the wrong one in a song. This is part of my 7th chord series where we're learning a bunch of different 7th chords and some songs to put them into practice. You'll find the link to the full series in the description, along with my Patreon page where you can download a bunch of chord diagrams as well as plenty other resources. And if you're interested in the theory of 7th chords, I've done a video on that as well, also linked below. But for now, let's dive into these major 7ths. So the first chord we're going to look at is A major 7, and I'm going to show you 2 voicings to play this one. If we start with just a normal A chord with the 3 fingers in a row, we need to move the note on the G string back 1 fret to the 1st fret, but we're not going to be able to do it from this position, so we have to change the fingers a little bit. So 1st finger is going to pop onto that 1st fret G, and 2nd finger is going to replace it on 2nd fret of the D string. So at the moment we've got the open A, we've got 2nd fret D, 1st fret G, 2nd fret B, and open high E. And together they sound like this. So there's an A major 7, and as you can see, thumb is coming over the top and muting that low E string, so when we strum, we're only hearing the top 5 strings. And for the second voicing, just like we did in the dominant 7th video, we're going to add the upper octave of the 7th for the A. So once again, this works quite well with the barred A chord, so 1st finger just on those 3 strings. And we need to add the 4th fret on the top string for this, so we can do that either with the 3rd finger, which is a little bit stretchy, or probably a little bit better is the little finger. And you can see with that one I can get the thumb over once again to mute the low E string. So that's just another bit of a brighter voicing of that major 7 chord, so use whichever one works best for the musical situation that you're in. That gives you 2 options for an A major 7. Next we're going to look at C major 7, which is far easier. We're simply going to take a normal C chord and remove that 1st finger, which reveals the open B string. That adds the major 7th interval to the chord, so if I strum the whole thing, we get C major 7, so yeah, super simple and actually a really nice voicing of the chord. We'll take a look at D major 7 now, and if we start with a normal D chord, we actually need to move the note on the B string back 1 fret from this chord. So we can do that in this position, just squeeze all the fingers into that 2nd fret there. It does work for a D major 7, but it's not super comfortable. A far more convenient option is to actually use a bar with the 1st finger just on the top 3 strings. So the full chord is actually just the open D string, and then 2nd fret G, 2nd fret B, 2nd fret high E. And if you haven't tried barring yet, this is a really great first bar to get down on guitar because it's only covering the top 3 strings, so it doesn't require too much pressure. And like a normal D chord, you ideally want the thumb to come over and mute the bottom 2 strings, so that when we strum, we're only hearing those top 4. Next, we're going to look at F major 7. Now, if you're in the early stages of guitar, even the mere mention of an F chord might spark a bit of dread, but fortunately, F major 7 is far easier to play than normal F chord because it doesn't involve that little 1st finger bar that causes most of the difficulty. Therefore, sometimes F major 7 can actually be a good beginner workaround in songs that include an F chord. You just have to try it. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, depending on the key. But long term, don't let that become a crutch that stops you working on that standard F chord, because it is a really important hurdle to overcome as a guitar player. So to play this F major 7, if we start with just a simple 4-note F chord, we simply need to bend that joint in our 1st finger, so we create an angle, which means that we can play the 1st fret on the B, but leave the high E string open. So that E string on the top of the chord adds the major 7th interval to create the major 7th chord. So it's really important that the 1st finger isn't too flat that it mutes that string. Now we can also play this as a 5-note chord by replacing the 3rd finger note with the little finger and then popping the 3rd finger onto the A string. This tends to be the one that I go for. I think it's quite a nice voicing. And in terms of the thumb muting, you just need to mute whichever strings you want playing on the bottom. So if you do play the 4-note version, ideally you'd want thumb to come over and mute the bottom 2 strings. But if you're playing the 5-string version, thumb can just mute that bottom string, and then when you strum, you're only hearing the notes that you want to hear in the chord. G major 7 now, and like the G dominant 7 in the previous video, if we start from a normal G chord, we have to reposition the fingers to play this one. So we're going to be using fingers 2 and 3 to play the usual notes on the bottom 2 strings. This frees up the first finger, which can play that F sharp note on the 2nd fret of the high E string. That adds the major 7th interval, which gives us our major 7th chord. Now this can be a little bit of a cramped voicing, so another alternative is to lose the 3rd finger and replace it with the 2nd finger. So 2nd finger is now playing the root note on the 3rd fret of the bottom string, while also muting the A string, but then the top of the chord remains the same, so top 4 strings are ringing out. So there you have 2 voicings to try and see which one you like best. There's no need for any thumb muting in this one, you just have to make sure that that A string is muted if you're not playing the 2nd fret. Finally, I'm going to speak a little bit about E major 7. Now, E major 7 is technically possible as an open chord. We do it by taking an open E and moving the note on the D string back 1 fret. So we'd have to reposition the fingers. That would sound like this. So it is possible to play, but in my opinion, the voicing isn't the best. It's quite muddy and dull, and I think most guitar players would agree, as it's not a regular one that crops up in songs. So ideally, I'd advise playing E major using E major 7 using a bar chord, either this one or higher up this one. I know I'm a bit out of shot here, but you can hear that they're much brighter and clearer voicings, and I do have lessons on 7th bar chords coming up later in the series, so we'll cover all of those options in that one as well. So there you have your major 7th chords. Just one more quick reminder not to get them mixed up with dominant 7ths, because that's a really common mistake, but you can brush up on all your 7th chord knowledge in this 7th chord series, linked in the description. Remember, you can also get the chord diagrams from Patreon and watch the theory video about 7th chords if you're interested in that. Be sure to subscribe for more content and like this video if you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one where we look at minor 7ths.